Hi, this is the part 3 of overview of Old Testament events. Part 3, this time is exile era. Do you remember last time the divided kingdom was conquered by the foreign empires? Now, Israelites, they are taken captive again since Egyptian, Okay, let's have a look what happened. Well, from here, a little bit of history lessons. We need to know this. Well, around that time, 721 BC, the Assyrian Empire was thriving in the Middle East at that point. They had fierce, the cruel empire, by the way. Assyrians, they killed a lot of people. Those people who didn't submit to them, they just annihilated them. They didn't negotiate. They just killed them. They are feared and very cruel. And 721 BC, the Assyrian Empire came from the north and they went to northern kingdom of Israel and they ended the kingdom of Israel in the north. And this Assyrian Empire went on for from about 900 to 612 BC. See? But any empires, any country, they come to the end. How did it come? The fall of Assyrian Empire was brought by the Babylonian Empire. Okay, this is what happened. Because of their cruelty, lots of revolt occurred in a different area of the empire. And that actually resulted in the division of the empire and decline of Assyrian Empire's power. You see, and eventually this Assyrian Empire was divided in 4 parts, 4 nations. One is the Babylonian Empire down in Mesopotamia. And there's another one called the Persian Empire in a place now it's called Iran. And another part became Egypt, and another part called Lydia, which is now Turkey. Yeah? Interesting, this Lydia. They were the actually first one started using the coins, metal coins, and started the money economy. Before that, little rabbit trail now. Before that, people are exchanging products to products. You see, this bunch of wheat to this bunch of meat. And the valued commodity was the cattle, like they gave 2 sheep for 5 sacks of wheat or something like that. But Lydia started using coins, the money. And from there, the history of money began. Well, anyway, so Babylonian Empire, Persian Empire, Egyptian Empire, and Lydian Empire. So Assyrian Empire was divided in all those 4 areas. So when a country is divided, of course, their power goes down. And the capital, Nineveh, eventually fell to Babylonian and Persian empires. And that's the end of Assyrian Empire now. Now, the Babylonian Empire came up. And about 586 BC, Babylonian Empire came down to the south of Israel and destroyed Jerusalem and the temple, and took all the Israelites into captivity to Babylonia. And this captivity went on for 70 years, and this is called exile era or Babylonian captivity. And this time, prophets Daniel and Ezekiel are active. They prophesied about this era. So remember, when they're in exile, Daniel and Ezekiel talked about, prophesied. Well, this Babylonian Empire didn't go that long, They are short-lived empire. But next one was Persian Empire. One of the 4 came out of the Assyrian Empire. This Persian Empire was so big and strong, actually conquered Babylonian Empire. And the whole Middle East up to Northern Africa became Persian Empire under Persian rule. Of course, with that, Israelite became under the Persian rule. Since Persia, the Cyrus II founded Achaemenid Persia, this known as Achaemenid Persia. The empire ruled the territory, as I said, extended from Indus River by the India west side of India through the Middle East to the Egypt, and Lydia up in north, currently Turkey. So the vast area that they conquered, the Persian, one of the biggest one, other than the Mongolian Empire afterwards. But anyway, this interesting is the Persian occupation policy was very much different from the Assyrians. Do you remember Assyrians so cruel? You see, but these Persians, they're much more political and very lenient to Jewish people. Much more lenient than Assyrians and Babylonians. So the actually Israelites were allowed to have their autonomy, and they were allowed to practice their religion and beliefs and their customs as well. You see. And what happened is the Persian Empire, when Emperor Cyrus was an emperor of the Persian Empire, he issued a decree to the nation ordering the restoration of Jewish community, which is 538 BC, around that time, that allowed exiled Jews to return to Jerusalem and to rebuild the temple, to rebuild the wall. You know, you can read that in 2 Chronicles 36 and the Ezra, book of Ezra as well. You see, around that time, as I said, book of Ezra comes Nehemiah. Under Nehemiah, they rebuilt the wall of Jerusalem, and also they started rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem as well. And Persian Empire paid for it. See, around that time, the prophet Haggai and Zechariah were sent by God to encourage those Israelites to rebuild Jerusalem and temple. And also, the story of Esther is about this time as well. So this is end of Old Testament. They were captive in Babylonian, under the 3 empire rules they suffered. But at the end, they were allowed to go back to their own land, start rebuilding their life again. And this is the end of Old Testament time. Well, of course, history went on, but this is where the book ends. Well, I tell you, I'm going to give you a little bit more the stories after this book of Old Testament, before New Testament starts, because it's good to know what happened. So that will be on part 4 of this overview event of Old Testament. See you then.